We could do anything. But what you gonna do for it? How you gonna move for it? What you gonna be?
Welcome to A-Train Bets. I'm the A-Train and I make bets. And it is currently mid-August of 2023. And for the last 6 weeks or so, we have been struggling. It's been a tough road. And like any data-driven bettor, I am trying to figure out why, right? Has something fundamentally changed? Is it just short-term variance and what have you? But we figured something out, I think, and looking at the data and doing it. And so in a live stream that I recently did, I went through the analysis that we did or the analysis that I did in making the determination that this wasn't just variance, that there was more going on here that was causing us this down streak. And I think it's so important to not only understand the particulars of this, individual play, if it's something that might be impacting your own positive EV betting, but it's also introducing this notion of things that are profitable strategies in sports betting that aren't just positive EV. Positive EV is one kind of methodology you can use to find profitable sports plays. What we're doing in the particular example that I'll show you is that it's not a positive EV, a classic positive EV strategy. It's actually another kind of sharp sports betting play. This is really tied to something called a historically mispriced market. And I think what we've identified is a situation in which, in this case, FanDuel had found a way to make better revenues for themselves as a sports book to capitalize on it. And it threw off our math in the positive EV calculations that we were doing, and it caused us to lose some money. And so I think if you really are serious about understanding how sharp sports betting works, not just positive EV betting, this is an advanced class that I think is worth your time to understand and spend some time thinking about and realizing that there's a whole world of opportunities beyond the kind of price discrepancy strategy that positive EV betting is. And so that's where I think I want to share this as a standalone video so that you can use that and understand, hey, here's how I might want to be thinking about these kinds of challenges and how I might be wanting to interrogate and balancing, the fact that we know there's variance in sports betting, but at some point you might need to think deeper and say, hey, is there a process deficiency that I have here that's causing me to lose money? Unfortunately, we still haven't found that process deficiency that causes you to win money, right? All the mistakes seem to make you less money. So if you find that your results aren't what you think they should be, and certainly for the last several weeks for us, it hasn't been that way, you've got to think like this. And to me, it's about righting the ship. It's about getting back on the positive track, but it's also about exploring really what it takes to be a sharp sports bettor across the entire spectrum of opportunities. So check this out, and hopefully it will help you too. Variance is a thing. Recency bias is a thing. The right answer most of the time is to carry on, to keep doing what you're doing if you know you have a positive strategy. However, I don't. And I'm now convinced that I don't, which is a difference of opinion that has been building, that I push back on until I can't anymore because the data overwhelms me. Usually it manifests and presents in me getting really pissed off. And then it presents in me figuring it out. And then it presents in me winning a fucking shitload of money. What has changed? What happened? If you are looking at quantitative assessment, you're looking at how do I do things in a mathematically sound way, or be a sharp bettor or sharp advantage gambler, especially in the face of high degrees of variance, which we know we will have. How do you evaluate a strategy? Well, the best way is if you have enough data to statistically be statistically significant in those conclusions. That's ideal, hard to get to. The law of large numbers is such that you can have some pretty long swings. And so that the worst thing you can do is react too much to short-term information and make a huge change to your strategy right then, right? Like, because if you make that change to the strategy, you lose out on all of the data that you'd be compiling, and so you'll never really know if you did the right thing. It may detract from your results, or it may completely cancel your result. You won't know because you'll no longer have the benefit of the data of having done it. So I'm always hesitant to be too rash in any strategic changes. Okay, but there comes a point too where like you see it over and over again. You're like, okay, something is broken here. You look at those charts, it's not like way up and down. It is. And so you're like, oh, well, what's changed since the start of July? Two things. One is I've rolled out enhancements to the money machine, and the money machine now calculates things a lot faster. It calculates things, pretty much the same way it always has, but I've implemented more confidence-based betting. I've done, some tweaks to the strategy. I've tweaked things there, what have you. Okay. That's one thing. The second thing that we know very well, anybody who's been tailing the bets and doing this, one of the things that we know is that FanDuel has, in some point in July, oddly, suspiciously timed with when we started getting crushed. They switched to many of their player props only having over bets available. And we knew that was there, but when we would do the analysis, and I have one up here. I don't know if this is still available or not, but this is a pretty good example of just the kind of bet that we're seeing. So if I go over here to the analysis page, you can see you've got Carlos Santana, despite his melodious guitar playing, has a over on his player bases of plus 160, whereas most of the market is consolidated at about 135 to 140, 143 on the high end here for Bet Rivers. So from a positive EV strategy standpoint, this is an awesome play, right? Awesome play, right? We're going to look at it. We're going to do, okay, we'll go over here. We'll load up our money machine, 2% play, $54. This is a good play. I would play this in a heartbeat yesterday. I'm not playing it today, and here's why. Bunch of reasons, actually. Because it's not... Okay, so what I've said, and I still maintain, we don't have enough data to empirically know that we are doing something wrong with these player offers. Everything that we've been taught with positive EV betting. I mean, you look at this. Just look at the numbers. That plus 160 screams, play me, right? That's an outlier line if there ever was one, right? You're 18 points. It's not the biggest of all time, but we're seeing 40-point outliers and stuff like that at times as well. And so when you see that... Oh, I hit a button. I'm not sure what it did. When you see that kind of thing, though, so our positive EV strategy would have us play that bet, right? Because outlier line, all of that. But there's a couple things. And so what we've said is okay, we still don't have enough data to statistically know that this bet is wrong. Two, it's FanDuel. They've been my ATM more than anybody in this place, right? So I'm not going to all of a sudden say, FanDuel all of a sudden got really sharp on player props. That's a tough lift for me. That's a tough one for me to mentally be like, that book that you've been just crushing since you started this whole odds jam thing. Yeah, they're the sharpest book in town now when it comes to player props. Right? So that was a tough one logically to assess. So what, though, as I started thinking about it, something dawned on me. All right. So again, go back. July, money machine's doing stuff, but it's not fundamentally different than anything else. And I think that there's mathematical basis to everything that the money machine's doing. So I'm not seeing why that would be bad, but we are definitely seeing some serious negative results on these props. We also have the anecdotal evidence of people saying, these lines are good, but these do not come in enough to even at those inflated lines. We were talking about that on the Patreon page or whatever. And I'm like, stay the course, variance, blah, blah, blah. It's logical to say that when it's FanDuel. Who's FanDuel to figure this stuff out, right? And so the thing is, though, you lose enough money, you're like, okay, what do I need to do here? So as much as I shrugged it off for a while, I wasn't willing to change my betting. I'm still not, just based on what we've talked about so far. However, I want to talk about something. And this is why there was something about this whole scenario that bothered me. And, I've mentioned it, I think, on the show before, that I have like this spidey sense, almost as what somebody called it, where my eye starts twitching when something's bothering me. And I don't know what it is, but something inside of me is telling me something's wrong. When I look at this, and I'm like, this is just crazy. Why is FanDuel doing this? And how are they getting away with this? And I'm like, as a sports book, sports books typically are offering both sides of the lines. They're going to make their 4 or 5% on both sides, and they're not going to really care which side happens, right? They're going to lock it in. And so moving to a one-sided thing, like, that's crazy. Why would they do that? And I started thinking about it. You see where I'm going with this? You could play both sides and you could not have any care what happens and get a small return. Or you could play one side and get a really big return and not have to worry about the other side. Because if you play enough of them, like, I don't know, potentially offer odds for every player, then you get the benefit of the higher return. So if you haven't sensed where I'm going with this, it's just like how we assess arbitrage plays. It's just like how we say when we're looking at arbitrage plays, one side of that arbitrage is plus EV. The other side of the arbitrage is negative EV. So what do? We play one side of it, right? So I'm like, this pattern makes a ton of sense now. FanDuel said, you know what? We keep losing on all these unders because it takes us, and think about what happens here. What do we know? We know square bettors are traditionally inclined to play overs versus unders, right? Square bettors, non-sharp bettors, they want to bet things that are going to happen. Sharp bettors traditionally bet things that won't. I've learned that from studying this stuff for a long time, so I knew that. But what does that imply if you're offering a two-way market? Well, if you want to get balanced action, you've got to give a better deal to the people that are betting the unders, because that's where the sharps are. But they're going to only go when there's a good enough price. So the public's going to bet the overs on whatever. So they're going to get the shittiest deal in the world. They're not even going to notice. They're just going to try to bet this. Oh, they're going to lose. Oh, whatever. But you do that across all of the player props, and you start to realize, hey, why keep giving all these sharp bettors such a good price just to get balanced action? Fuck that shit. Let's just do the square action on the overs. That actually logically connects with what we know about sharp markets, what we know about how these markets work and how sharp bettors and square bettors operate. So think about that. FanDuel uses the same exact strategy then on their setting of the lines that we use on arbitrage plays just by taking half of it. Well, what else does that imply? It means they can get away with offering better lines to the customer because they're crushing it, because that side wins most of the time. So to say any of this, to say, hey, you know what, FanDuel might be right here, it implies a couple really important things that really should make you go, huh? One is that the market's not efficient. We'll get back to that in a second. The second thing is that that FanDuel has a price that's still disadvantageous even when they're an outlier. And a lot of times they're not even that big of an outlier on their one-sided lines. It's just sometimes they are. So this also plays into the fact that FanDuel isn't any better than they've ever been at setting the lines. They're not trying to give a great deal. They're just doing this strategically by offering those one-sided lines. Even not setting good lines, they can still crush the square bettors and just say, fuck the sharps, because the sharps would be playing the under, right? So this is the thing that we're thinking about. And so that implication is huge, because it means that the markets are not efficient, right? So if the markets are not efficient, that there's a problem here then. It means that this is not a positive EV play of what we're suggesting. So the positive EV play is to play into FanDuel's plus 160 on Carlos Santana, right? That's what the math tells us from a positive EV perspective. However, we should know that there's not, positive EV plays are not the only way to make money in sharp betting, right? There's a concept called historically mispriced markets. And in this case, one might argue that's really what underlies what FanDuel's doing here. So what we're doing is saying, hey, we have evidence here from data and the logic surrounding it to say, hey, we think that this market is so traditionally mispriced because most of the books are trying to get balanced action that the mispricing of this market has created it such that the positive EV strategies don't work on this. I can actually accept that. That makes sense to me, because one of the things that I would really struggle with is I'm not going to believe that FanDuel is all of a sudden great at setting sportsbook lines. But we did see that market shift in their strategy of offering these lines, at which point they realized they could be much more profitable. Based on my bankroll, they certainly have. So That's the thing. So this is where I'm coming at it, and I have not completely worked out what I want to do about this. But, I think that it's really about saying, are they using our own kind of strategy against us here? And that is really interesting to me, because there's a lot of evidence to that effect. So here's what we're going to do. One, I'm going to be looking for plays where I can go against that FanDuel one-sided line. I'm going to be looking at how can I find opportunities where I can play against that, where they've basically signaled to me that their line setting mechanism, which has been crushing me when I played against them, may be good enough to tell me where there may be opportunities to play the other side. Because this is a pretty bold statement. If I'm saying, hey, here's how I'm assessing the situation based on everything I'm looking at, I could be completely wrong still. It could just be complete variance, and I could be totally off the mark. But I think I've compiled enough data and enough losses that logically that makes sense, because we've got to keep in mind too, we know that trend about square bettors want to play overs. We know that anytime you see a one-sided line, it's a red flag. It may be different degrees of red flag, but it's a red flag a bit at minimum, right? So if that's the case, we've already got 2 strikes. We also have some data and empirical evidence that, yeah, we are getting crushed on these. And it's not just me, it's all of us, but we're playing a lot of the same bets. So could it be variance? There's a chance. Do I think we have enough evidence that maybe something is really going on here? I think so too. Hopefully this, explanation, this long-winded explanation of what's going on, hopefully helps give you some insight into how I'm approaching it and thinking about it. And I think it's totally fair to disagree with me. 3 days ago, I would have disagreed with me because I wasn't yet fully convinced that this hypothesis was even worth testing. This is just variance. I've got to keep pressing. I know there's a lot of variance in Major League Baseball. I know there's a lot of uncertainties in player props, especially. But I think this is a pretty compelling case worth testing. I'll go test it. But keep pushing yourself, keep thinking about this stuff. But I need to find ways to play the unders to test this hypothesis. Otherwise, I'm going to make one of the biggest mistakes you can make, which is react and then not get data to know whether or not you corrected. This actually ties into what I've long said about career consultants. Career consultants are dangerous to work with. And the reason why is that what do consultants do? They come in, implement something, and leave. Well, what happens is they come and implement something and then miss out on any opportunity to learn where they went wrong. Because it's when you've released it, when you've implemented it, and once you continue to maintain and enhance it, that you learn from what you did wrong. You do it better the next time. Consultants can come in and do their Control C, Control V, copy and paste forever and never learn how bad they are. I'm learning how bad I am. Lately, especially. But that's the thing, is that if I lose the data on the other side, say, well, fuck this, and I stop making bets, well, that doesn't really help me either. It's not okay to be 0. I want to be plus, right? And so if I just lose out on this opportunity entirely, A, I'm going to be not okay with not having solved the problem, and B, I will be convinced I'm missing out on something. So I'm gonna look at it, but it is a bold statement to say, hey, FanDuel might have figured out something that nobody else has figured out. Although you see some copycats in here too. Maybe there's a reason why a few of these books are offering only one-sided lines. Keep in mind, best case scenario, you use the data. Second best scenario, you use logic. Third and worst case scenario, you use emotion. I'm trying not to use emotion here, though I've got plenty of it. Logic, I think, is sound here. I think there's some real strong points that I've made this morning and that I've been thinking about and that I wanted to share with you. And, the data supports those conclusions, but I don't think there's enough data to draw those conclusions. So I'm by my nature going to try to be data driven, right? I'm going to try to see the data and expand it and continue to learn from it. FanDuel made that switch, and good on you for deciding to switch that up. I really am trying to create the quantified approach to this, and until I saw enough data to really suggest that, it was something I couldn't bring myself to not play, because everything I know about a positive EV strategy screamed that those were great plays. It wasn't until I really dug enough deeper and really understood that comparison to how we break down arbitrage plays that I understood what FanDuel was really doing there. And you know what? I'm better today than I was yesterday. I'm a better sharp better than I was yesterday. And that's the thing. All I can do is move forward and try to get better. And that's all I can hope to share with you. You know, if you guys have success tailing some bets, I'm glad. But if you guys learn how I'm thinking about this and are able to build on that, expand on that, and do more sharp betting yourself, then we've really succeeded. Well, I hope that helped you out. I hope that helped you think about things in a new way, maybe identified a hole in your own game, just like mine. And I pride myself on not coming out and saying I know everything. I pride myself on saying, you know, I want to help you. I want to help teach. I want to learn too. You know, all I can do is put myself out there and try my best to figure these things out. And I have a background that helps me facilitate doing that. I have the ability to create tools and techniques to make that happen. But to me, it's about educating people on how you too can become sharper sports bettors. It's not about saying, hey, here's the pick of the day, 3-unit play, go play that. No, it's not that. It's about helping you think about this in a way where you can go in, have a nice hobby, have a nice side hustle where you can win some real money, but also understand how it all works. I think OddsJam is fantastic at helping people get introduced to these concepts, but if you really want to understand and push your knowledge in a way that helps you find new opportunities, find the real lucrative stuff that are harder to find and that are harder to execute, that's where we're heading with A-Train Bets and some of the things that we have in store for you going on. So with that, if you like this kind of content, please like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Please go to atrainbets.com for a bunch of links to different things, a lot of referral codes and things like that. Most notably, go to atrainbetsoddsjam.com and use promo code ATRAINBETS. If you're signing up for OddsJam, you can save 20% off for life on OddsJam, and I'll get you a copy of the manual version of our Money Machine calculator, and you will have that to help you in your sharp sports betting as well. And so with that, thank you all for watching. Check out my live streams twice daily, Monday through Friday, and usually once daily on the weekends as well, where I place my bets and teach you how to do the same. With that, thank you so much for joining, and we'll see you on the next one.